right, let's do a compare and contrast. And I actually happen to have three different species of pine trees here. Now, this is East Central Florida, which, I mean, depending upon where you're at, this stuff does kind of vary a bit. Obviously, the soil's different, the climate and weather is different. These loblolly pines were planted here. These are cultivated. They do not grow wild in this area. This, however, does. Now, one caveat before I go any further is that these slash pine are not like the slash pine you find further north. These are South Florida slash pines. These are Pinus eliata densa, and the needles are a bit longer, and they're mostly in twos. The pine cones are smaller. This right here is a longleaf pine, and we're see that the bark looks very much the same. I mean, if you look carefully, the bark's a little shaggier on this longleaf pine than the slash pine. But if you look up in the tree, the longleaf pine, their twigs are thicker than the slash pine twigs. The pine cones are also a lot bigger. I don't see any pine cones on the ground, but if we can zoom in here, and hopefully we can see these green pine cones, if the resolution is good enough. Let's zoom in. You can see how big that pine cone is right there. Slash pine cones are a lot smaller. Again, this is South Florida slash pine. Okay. Now, your typical slash pine will have bigger pine cones than this. So, again, this is not a direct comparison. Let's take a look at the pine needles. Now, I'm picking up a bunch of needles here that are in twos, and this is from the slash pine. Almost all the needles will be in twos from that. There's maybe some threes, but mostly in twos. This one, let's go over here. Let's take a look at what we got. These should be all in threes. This one right here. Sometimes they're in fours. This one right here. Here's a pine cone right here. Let's compare pine cones. Longleaf pine slash pine, or South Florida slash pine, actually. So, longleaf pine has pine needles that are mostly in threes, occasionally fours, and rarely twos and fives. And I mean very rare. This is slash pine, South Florida slash pine, mostly twos with some threes. Loblolly pine, almost all, well, it should be all threes actually. And of course, the pine cones are characteristically pointed. These actually don't have any pine cones on them, but as you can see, the twigs are much thinner than the slash pine and the longleaf pine. So, I don't know what else to tell you. I mean, they do, to the untrained eye, they do look very much the same. The differences are subtle. I mean, there are in the same genus. In fact, even more, they're actually genetically pretty related to each other, the two species. But they are two different species, I assure you. Loblolly pine, you can tell because the needles are shorter, and they tend to have more of a thicker branching pattern. Yeah, I mean, it's really just a matter of experience. But I've been doing this for 25 plus years. uh, Dating myself here. But anyway, um, I've seen a lot of these. So that's a slash pine. That's a longleaf pine. And as you can see, that slash pine has long needles on it. So, and that's the way she goes.